Hello and welcome to Design Emergency. I'm Alice Rawsthorn, co-founder of Design Emergency with my friend and fellow design obsessive Paola Antonelli, and we're thrilled to welcome back the brilliant Dutch book designer Irma Boom. She was one of our first interviewees after we launched Design Emergency in 2020, and we've been eager to interview Irma again ever since, so thank you for agreeing to return. Irma is regarded as one of our greatest living book designers, and no wonder, because she has designed some of the most beautiful, intriguing, original and surprising books of our time by constantly experimenting with new facets of book design in terms of their functions, forms, tactility, scent, and by experimenting with new printing techniques and papers. Irma has devoted her working life to books ever since she stumbled across a class as an art student in Amsterdam and discovered a teacher extolling the joys of book design. From her Amsterdam studio, which houses an incredible collection of historic books, Irma has emerged as a passionate champion of traditional printed books at a time when, like other analogue objects, they face ever greater competition from their digital counterparts. Her strongest arguments in favour of printed books are, of course, those that she designs herself. Since 2010, Irma has catalogued them in a series of miniature books, and the next mini-book, her fourth, will be published in Japan in June with the title Book Activist. So Irma, welcome to Design Emergency, and tell us about Book Activist.
Thank you, Alice. Yes, why Book Activist? My previous book was the manifesto for the book Manifest, and now Book Activist. What I make is, I call it real books, so books which don't exist as a PDF. So I'm a sort of activist for the printed book. So for me, a book is a book can be anything. Could be a tablet, could be carved text in a stone. But for me, a book is printed on paper and bound. So basically, since Gutenberg, 1455. And what I try to do is to keep the book alive, to keep the printed book vital. And so sometimes people revert to a book as, oh, I've seen your book, but then they saw the PDF. Then I said, you didn't see you see the book. Because for me, the printed book has materiality, has size, has a very specific elements, what makes it this object. And that's what I want to keep alive, because the book is one of the most stable media, I think. And it didn't change that much since its beginning. And I think for me to research, to study, how I can keep the printed book alive, and that is still something you want to have, and to share information. That's also one of my big things, that a book is a very democratic medium, and you can share things. And why the activist thing is because I see a lot of digital media, which of course I use as well, and it's fantastic. But the book is an integral part of our civilization and our culture. Nobody says a painter should not paint anymore, because we still have painters, and we also have video artists, and that's what I think of. The book activist, to keep the printed book in its very specific form alive and investigate and search for the limits of what printed bookmaking is.
Well, and it has been a joy for me personally, and I know for Paola too, to follow this with your incredible books. And your miniature books have been a beautiful way of doing this, because you have literally catalogued your own output. Are you already planning the next miniature book? And also, how big is it likely to be? Because each of the mini books has increased in scale, albeit only slightly. They're still miniature with each new edition.
So the book grows every year 3%, even if it's not produced. So because otherwise the development of the size of the book is very low. So that's why I thought it has to grow 3% every year. So if I become 100, I have almost an A5 size book. So that's I hope I will become a little bit older. But what I was thinking, so the book now has 1,500 pages, so it's big bigger. But I thought maybe the next book, I have no idea what the title of that book is, but maybe it should have less pages so that it's that I go down in volume, but keep, of course, the growing, the height, the dimension of the book will grow, but maybe not the page numbers. Maybe I go to a small pamphlet or something. That's also what I'm thinking of, because where does it end if I add pages and pages? Then it becomes an impossible book, and that's and also very expensive, because to make a small book is more expensive than to make a big book. And that was also one of the reasons to make a mini book. Of course, I believe in the Japanese way of working, that you have to become better and then you deserve a bigger size. That's basically like the wave of Hokusai. He was practicing to make it better and better. And that's what I feel in my work as well. But that doesn't mean that it has to grow all the time. So maybe book 5 goes back to 100 pages. It's very possible, and only a statement could be. So I don't know.
Well, very intriguing, and I look forward to your centenarian book, the A5 version. Now, when we were discussing this interview, you said, "I'm not a typical book designer." What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so when I started working at the government printing office a long time ago, I think it was 85, and I started to work at the publishing department. And if I got a book project to do, they gave me the text and images to put together. From the very beginning, I resisted that idea that making a book is just putting stuff together, which already somebody else wrote and collected. I think I'm at my best if I can work on a book where I'm part of the first thoughts of a book. So basically, part of the editorial board. And I also think that I'm not really designing. That's what. And I also think that I'm a bad designer. I think more in ideas, and I see a book project as a whole, not only moving images and placing, making beautiful typography. Basically, for me, typography is using Neuzeit S and Plantin. I don't have so much. I limit myself to a few typefaces, because then I can think of the bigger view and the bigger idea for a book. And for me, that's more important. And I really like the idea, if you have a concept, if you have an idea for a specific project, that if you follow my own made instructions to make that the book designs itself. And that's much more satisfying and challenging and exciting than moving text and images on a page. I'm not interested in it at all. It's for me the big picture of a book project.
And your instincts. I love the idea of the book designing itself and taking over. Now, you've alluded to your passion for historical books and the incredible research you've been doing over a lengthy period in the Vatican. And you've got a wonderful collection of historic books in your studio. How did this arise, and what role do they play in your work?
Well, what I when I was invited to be an artist in residence at the American Academy, first I thought, well, what should I do there? Because normally it's Americans who stay there, and suddenly I was this Dutch person in the American Academy, and being there, I got this huge studio, and I thought, well, what shall I do? I'm in the city of libraries. I have to investigate books. Of course, I started already my own library since basically I'm a designer. But there I made a show of my own work in my big studio. And it was an old lady who said at the dinner table, she asked me, what are you doing? What are you doing here as a Dutch person at the American Academy? And I said, well, I really want to study the book because I'm in the city of libraries. And I went already to, beautiful Casa Natenza, or you have the Angelica Library, beautiful and very interesting libraries. But she said, can I see your work? And after seeing the exhibition I made in my studio, she saw the books and she said, well, the only library where you should go to is the Vatican Library. You belong to the Vatican Library. So the Vatican Library, is only for scholars, and what can I do there? But she said, after seeing your book, if you go there, you see you find your references in the library. And so I followed her advice, and I applied to study at the Vatican Library. First, they thought, well, a designer, what is your plan? I said, well, I am a book designer, and I know you have all these scholars in the library researching for 3 months one little detail of a letter or something. And when I explained my idea that I wanted to research the book as a total entity, they thought, well, what books will she look for? But I made a timeline for myself with the most important or salient events in history. And if there's a specific date, I was looking for books for a specific date. And that really gave me a lot of unexpected, beautiful samples of bookmaking. And in the beginning, I was only looking at stampati, so at the printed books, but then I realized I have to go also to the manuscritti, so to the manuscripts, and that was really exciting. Walking from one reading room to the other. I got so excited, and I was making so much noise with. Of course, I always wear clocks, and it was on these wooden floors. Terrible. So they wanted to throw me out, because they said it's too disturbing to have this person walking from one reading room to the other on her wooden shoes. But anyway, one of the most beautiful books I saw was Vitruvius. And Vitruvius is a book from 1522. And what I just explained, that I really want that the book makes itself. And the Vitruvius book is one of these books which makes itself. So it's based on a very old book. And the book I found, it's called, I have it in Italian, but it's the book on architecture from 1521. And they used the original text of Vitruvius. It's basically a small part of a page, and then around this text are the comments. So they're how can I describe it? So they have these excerpts of Vitruvius, and then they explain what Vitruvius meant by his text. And so sometimes the text is big, sometimes the text of Vitruvius is long, but there's always this commentary around the original text. So it's basically an idea, and then it goes on for I don't know how many pages, but quite a big book. And that's what I thought was interesting, that the idea I had, the book makes itself, and I thought that was one of the first books where I saw in an historic book that it already happened. It's not me who invented it; it is already existing, and that was a big inspiration. So, of course, it's something in retrospective which I found, but it is also something and which encouraged me to keep on working in the same method as I'm already working.
It's fascinating to think that as early as the 16th century, this work, which we think of as being very modern and relatively recent, was already being done, these sort of abstractions of books, and also very playful books in such a magnificent and serious context. So, Irma, I've asked you if you will talk us through the design thinking for 3 of your books, and you've chosen the ones that you want to discuss. And the first is Rem Koolhaas's Elements of Architecture, which was published in 2019.
Yes, I always, you don't see it, but I need to have the book in front of me, otherwise I cannot talk about it.
Perfect.
Such a pity. What is interesting, and also working with the architect Rem Koolhaas, is that he, from the very beginning, he invites me to participate. And I think that is, of course, a very good idea of him. But he also, so I become part of this whole study he did with the Harvard students. And the Elements of Architecture was the show at the Venice Biennale in 2014. So he invited me, not every week, but many times to OMA in Rotterdam to work with the Harvard students and to develop a book together. And it was not that I only had to make a design. I was also invited to add text and to add thoughts to it, and I thought that was very generous. So I was. And for me as a bookmaker, also important to be challenged, also to write some text, and it's not even my field, because I'm this book designer. I'm totally obsessed with the printed book. But he invited me to think about door, to think about window, and to think about the toilet and all of these elements which were discussed in the book. When we made the book for the Venice Biennale, we didn't make the complete book, so not the Elements of Architecture together, because that book is 2,500 whatever pages. For the Venice Biennale, we made thin books, a book for door, a book for stair, a book for wall, a book for ceiling. And when we decided in 2017 to make the complete book with all the elements together, I put all the books together. So all the 15 elements were put in one file, in one InDesign file. But what I also did was I kept the page numbers from the separate books. And I gave for the page number, and I added page numbers for the complete book. And I thought that was my invention, to have two page number systems in a book. But if you go to the Vatican, if you go to look for very specific books, that already happened. So I thought that, again, that already existed. And what I also thought was interesting, in the old days, a book, which we call now a book, is a complete printed book. But in the old days, a book was a chapter. So you would refer to a book as to a chapter. So basically, Elements of Architecture also refers to that old idea of facade being a chapter, not be how can I say that clearly? The word chapter didn't exist. The word book was the word for chapter. So you would refer even in the Bible to book this and this, but basically you refer to a chapter.
Is that because all the pages weren't ever published together as a book, or initially weren't published together as a book, but different sections were released at different times, which even as late as the 19th century was the case for literary fiction? For example, if you think of George Eliot, Charles Dickens, they all wrote on this sort of chapter by chapter basis, and people would wait anxiously and giddily each week for the latest segment to come.
Yeah, right. But what I think is interesting that I thought, and a lot of people always say, "Oh, you're such an avant-garde bookmaker." But if you go and if you know your history, then everything already has been done. And so that the word chapter is new. The page number is new. Before it was called folio. But there were sort of indices that was already made. And so what I did for Elements of Architecture, the book starts immediately with, I have to look, with the first element. I think that is floor. And then only in the middle of the book, I placed the content page. And the content page is basically an index. And so it's all these, and this is all pre-Vatican study that I did this. So that makes it so interesting for me that how I work is basically 500 years ago, but that a lot of people complain about. Oh, but where's the content page? Where is this or where is that? But yeah, but I work almost as a monk on the books with another perspective and another idea. And that's why I think elements of architecture for me is so interesting, because all these references to old books, and it looks very modern. It looks super modern. And another thing is what I like about elements of architecture. When Rem made with Bruce Mau SML XL, I was working with an art historian, Johan Pineapple, on the SHV book. And those were the first fat books. And Rem and I met through fat book. Of course, SHV was much fatter than SML XL. But it was for us also to deal with the fat book. We said if we both make together the fattest book, then we don't have to discuss the fat book anymore. So this is also the end of the fat book for us together. And we made a Guggenheim catalog, which is for countryside, which is tiny. It's the size of the first pocketbook. And the first pocketbook was invented in 1501.
And the second book you've chosen to talk about is an annual report published in 1988, and this is the Raad voor de Kunst annual report.
Yeah.
So why have you chosen this, and also what was the design thinking behind it?
Yeah, so in 1988, I was still working at the government publishing and printing office. And that was a completely different time of working. It was very luxurious. If I made a book only in black and white, they always said, "Oh, can you add a color? You can add 2 Pantone colors." And it was also always very weird that they were encouraging me to do more. And in the beginning, I was only making books in black and white or only in red. So it's very simple books. Simple. And but at some point, I got a commission to make this annual report for the Arts Council. So the Art Council is still a very important institute in the Netherlands for the cultural sector, because they decide who gets the subsidies from the government. And so the annual report contains text about theater, about film, about all the cultural sectors. And at the end of and of course it contains also all the numbers where all the money goes to. But basically this annual report was every year the same. And at some point they asked me, can you come up with something else? But they didn't said to me, they said to me basically, take your freedom, because nobody reads this annual report, and because it contains the same text as always, and come with a nice idea. And then I thought, but so it was a bit conflicting, because it is very important. But on the other hand, they said, well, text is always the same, and do what you want. And I thought that was a little bit an arrogant way of giving a commission. So it's not important, but do what you want. And so all these conflicting things. So I made a conflicting annual report. It's very thin. I think it's only 3 millimeters thick, so it's really, comparing to elements of architecture, which is 11 centimeters. This is 3 millimeter. And what I did was, so I thought I come up with an idea for the concept for the annual report. I wanted to do something about color, because it's for the art world. So I thought, I do something about color. So I took yellow, red, and blue. And this whole annual report is printed in yellow, red, and blue. I didn't use black. And with yellow, red, and blue, you can make several color combinations. You have a color combination like yellow and red, and then the next color combination is yellow and blue, and then you can make red and blue. And so these color combinations were dividers for the text. So first, for example, you had theater, 2 pages, a spread. And I didn't want to add, only for every subject, theater in this case, I wanted to use no more than a spread. So if there was a lot of text, the text became very small because I only wanted to place the text on the spread. If there was not so much text, the type was bigger because there was not so much text. So there was always, almost if the text is breathing on the spread. So, and it was also before computer time, so I had to give type instructions to a typesetter because there was no Apple Macintosh, and I also wanted to have the the typesetting very how do you say it? With no articulation. So it's for example, a text is typesetting 12 on 14, and then even the heading was also 12, but then I used red. The plain text or the main text was printed in yellow, red, and blue on top of each other. So you get a sort of black. Paragraphs were indicated by a typographical square of white. Page numbers were integrated in this block of text. They were in cyan. Headings were in green, so they were in yellow and blue. So I used color to indicate the structure of the whole of the annual report, and so it was quite a thing. It was even very conceptual. I must say, I think it's one of my best works. But it was highly criticized at that time. Even in the parliament, they spoke about this crazy annual report, a waste of money. But and it's printed on very thin paper. Maybe you can even hear it.
I hear the rustle.
Yeah. And but for me it was also a statement. I thought, if you're so arrogant that you say, well, it's the same as last year, but on the other hand, take your freedom. I thought they deserved the annual report. They got what they deserved. That's basically what I want to say. But on the other hand, they gave me the opportunity to do this amazing experiment. And now I'm not sure if I made it almost how many years ago? 40 years ago? Or even longer, I think. I wonder if I still would have the courage, if I got this same sort of assignment or commission, if I could do this again. After making so many books, more than 500 books, would I still have the sort of courage or being so fearless as then, or maybe naive as in 1988. I don't know. But if I look at the annual report, it reminds me of being courageous in bookmaking, but nobody has it because the annual report is so thin. It's in no library. You cannot find it. So it disappeared because of the thinness. So that's also a problem. A book has to have a spine. And that's why a spine is super important. I also realized in the Vatican that you hardly see books with great covers. Covers only became important when bookselling became important. It's marketing. But the spine of the book is the most important. Look at our bookshelves. Alice and I can see each other. And what you see of a book is basically the spine. That's how you find a book. And this annual report doesn't have a spine. So it's gone.
I am sympathetic to that because when I forage around my books for research, books that don't have spine, they can look incredibly beautiful, but they're so difficult to find as the years roll by. Yeah. But final question on this, did no one else support it at the time? Your colleagues, interesting people within design circles?
Yeah, I must say it got a design award. But it would be very interesting to send that jury report to you. So the publishing house sent it in for the best design books. I've never sent any book for an award to any institution. But if you read the annual report, why they in the end give it an award, so it was, I think, the most discussed book. You can hardly call it a book because it's so thin. It's more a brochure. Why it got an award is terrible. They really said it's the limit, and it's the limit of experimentation. This designer has no respect for the reader, and I'm totally lynched. Yeah. But it got an award because one jury member said, if this work is not awarded, I step out of the jury. Because this is a person who is daring to experiment even for this so-called important assignment, and she's daring to make a point. It should be awarded. Yeah. So in the end, it was very, very much discussed. Yeah, and I was supported by this jury member, so I should be lucky. Yeah.
Well, living well is, of course, the best revenge anyone could possibly have. So your success must have haunted and infuriated all the dreary conservatives over the years.
And now people want to have it, but it's gone. It's really gone. I think people threw it away because it was nothing. It is something and also it's very thin paper, so you can roll it. So it is so important for the art world, but on the other hand, it was not. So it's almost a useless thing, and it also only has Roman numbers on the cover. It doesn't say Raad voor de Kunst. It doesn't say anything. So if I look at it, I think, hey, you did it, and fearless. Yeah, but maybe it's also interesting. The way I was working at that time was very much in my own world. And maybe also because I studied art, painting. So maybe that is a different kind of thinking. So that's also why I'm not a typical designer. I look at books and design in another way.
Well, and design is the richer for it. So the third book you've chosen is a book on the brilliant fashion designer Martin Margiela, which was published in 2021. So actually many years after he'd stopped designing. So could you tell us why you chose it?
Yeah, what I thought, all these, I collaborate, of course, very intensely with Rem. But when Martin Margiela approached me, because he had actually a show at Eenwerk, and so at the gallery of Julius Vermeulen. And so when I met him, because he didn't know me, he knew Julius, but when we met, and and I told him I'm a bookmaker, and I gave him a few books, and he got really interested in the book. He said, do you want to make a book with me about my art? Because he stopped, I think, quite a while ago making art. Making fashion. And because he stepped out of the fashion world, and he's for 15 years already an artist. And I said yes, and he said, "Do you mind collaborating with me?" He said, "No, of course not. It would be amazing to collaborate with Martin, with him," and that's what we did. And I made many, many models, and what I thought was interesting that Martin showed me and explained me very precisely his projects. There are 19 projects in this book, and if there was a project, if I made a pile of images, and we collected material for each art project, I always put a post-it on that pile. And that gave a beautiful, I show it to Alice now, visual to have on the edges, because I love the edges of the book. Yeah, you saw all these colorful post-its. And then Martin said, "Well, can we do can we use the post-its for real?" I said, I don't think so, because it's handwork. We cannot do it, because then it's basically the post-it works as navigation, as it always does in my book. I always use post-its. My whole desk is post-it. But then I investigated if we can make a book where there is a content page in this book. But page numbers are very hard to find. But there was one printer in Belgium who said, "Well, I want to collaborate with you guys on a book where we can add post-its to the pages." And I thought that was wonderful, because basically the book is printed, but it looks very much like a model I've made. The printed book looks like my model. Also because the book has no cover, because Martin didn't want to have a cover. You know that he's invisible. Nobody knows how he looks except me, because I worked with him. So I thought it was interesting to work with somebody like him, very experimental fashion designer, also a very experimental artist, and that we could make this very special book together. I don't think that I alone would ever have done it, but because of our collaboration, it became to a being. Because if my model looks like that, then with these post-its on the edges, that is not exciting, because I do it myself. But if an industrial-made book has post-its, that is something special, and that the dummy became the book. So that for me is the most incredible part of this. So it is in that sense very, for me, and I think also for Martin, was very experimental. Yeah, and what was very exciting. Yeah, and what was very exciting. So this book was made for Anticipation in Paris, and for his show there. Of course, he was not at the opening, but I wish he was there, because the books sold like hell. Everybody bought books, and not one book, many books. So the books sold. So that same evening, Anticipation decided to order a reprint. And that's for me the best-selling book ever. Of course, I like that books go into the world. That's why you make books. It's distribution and sharing of thought and knowledge. Yeah, that was fantastic. That immediately they ordered another 5,000 copies. So that was fantastic. Because, everybody wanted to have, of course, the Martin book, but also because it looked like Martin. It is him. It is, and also the photographs and the works inside. If you look through the book, you think it is a scrapbook. It looks like sketches. So if you flip through it, then it's photographs he made or I made. It's all this very inferior quality material, but there are also fold-outs. And if you do fold-out to fold-outs, you see the incredibly sharp, beautifully made photographs. But that's really a second layer. It's all about the process and about the making of his artwork. And so it fits very well, I think, with how he made fashion. So as a fashion designer, he was basically an artist, I think.
He was an incredible fashion designer. I still have the clothes I bought of his in the 90s, and I still wear them. And he was, of course, the designer who literally had a blank white rectangle as his label, no print, no words on it at all.
The little thingies, the stitches.
The 4 stitches in each corner. And obviously that was a very powerful statement, but only one designer could do that and still use it as a signifier.
You have to be the first. You have to be the first. Because that is the whole issue. It is him. And I think that is what is so incredible about Martin. You have to be the first. You have to think about it. And he did. And that makes him such an incredible fashion designer, artist. Basically, I think, as I said, always an artist. But also to make a book with him was this incredible experience. Completely fearless. I think this was the first book about his art. So it was for me an historic moment as a book designer. Yeah.
Well, and a wonderful one, and also a wonderful tribute to the Post-it, because it tends to be seen as a sort of humble, purely functional object, but I always see them as sort of signifiers of things that are interesting and intriguing or maybe overlooked. There's always a reason to put a Post-it on a particular page, and I love picking up books that I haven't read or used for years and seeing what the Post-it signified. So a lovely story. So let's look very quickly at the future of the book and the long-term impact of digitisation on it. Can your beloved printed books survive? And by that I mean, can they continue to be an important component of our daily lives and our culture, not just expensive and elitist luxuries?
No, and for me anyway, a book is a democratic multiple. So it's a very democratic medium, and because basically all the books I make, I think they're, except my new red book is expensive because it's so expensive to make a small book, but it's something affordable. I think if you cannot buy a book, I think books are available, I think, to everyone. Yeah, I think because making books is a culture, and it's a culture for the future. It's like composing music for an orchestra, or that still is happening. And I revert already to oil painting, to painting, and I think that making books is actually the same. It's a part of our culture, is civilization. And I also realized in the Vatican Library that you don't make books for the past or present, but you make books for the future because of its stability. Of course, you can burn it and it's gone, but basically it's a very stable medium if you compare it to the flux of internet. So if you have some knowledge to share, and if you want to revert to certain statements or things in history, it's very good that it's printed because it's unchangeable. And I think that is one of the values of printing. The printing basically in black and white, that you can always revert to older thoughts because you can build on that. You can if you read now Cicero or the classics, you can imagine if that was not printed. We had oral history, and in oral history, things change. So because of the printing, it has stability, and so I think if you have thought, you build on other thoughts. You have to develop. You build on, even as a designer, I built on other fundaments, on another fundament. And I think that's where, for me, the importance of bookmaking is. And also, of course, as a book is almost an evidence. If you have a show in a museum, you can, of course, take photographs. But the book brings this exhibition together and back together. And therefore, the book is an exhibition, and the exhibition is the book. I'm here quoting Setsi Glab. It serves many ideas, but I think the stability and the sort of evidence, I think, is for me important. But also text-wise, not even image-wise, but image-wise, of course, as well. But more a book as a container of thought, but for the future, what you write down today. And it's also, if I look at science fiction films, in every science fiction film, the printed book plays a very important role. I think somebody should do a study about it. In every science fiction film, there are books. Always. They're always reading books, or or it ends with finding the evidence of humanity. There's a book. Always. It's so interesting. So it's really iconic for civilization.
Wow. And finally, you've talked us through the process of designing some of your own books. Could you choose one of your favourite books, historic or contemporary, that was designed by someone else, and explain why it appeals to you so much?
if you say historic or contemporary, I go for historic, of course. So there is this book. So it's in my collection. So it's from Francesco Petrarca. This book is from 1522. So this is a book made by a Roman author. And what I really like in this book, it's a bit the same as Vitruvius. It has original text in it, and there are comments written around it. Where the Vitruvius book is very much in blocks. You have a small block of original text and then it's an enormous amount of commentary around it. But in the Petrarca book, the comments and the original text are a bit interwoven. So it looks to me like super experimental. I'll show it to Alice. Super experimental typography. It's almost if like a piece of textile, they placed the original text in it, and the comments are just around it. It's very in a way very strange, but extremely beautiful. And I'm always looking, can I use something like that? But it is very strange that. How they did it. And also the book is rather small, and the point size of the text in the book is size 4. So it's extremely small, but very legible. So the book is maybe 10 or 15 or 12 centimeters high. And now they talk about legibility. If sometimes I make a book, they say, it's not legible. But I think if you know your classics, this important book is almost with the eyes of today not readable. But the book contains commentaries on the sonnets of Petrarca.
So Irma, thank you so much for sharing your work or glimpses of your work with us so generously, and good luck with the launch of Book Activist and all your future plans. And thank you everyone for listening. You can find images of the books that Irma has discussed on our Instagram feed at design.emergency. And Paula and I look forward to welcoming you back to Design Emergency very soon, when we'll be talking with another global design leader who, like Irma Boom, is forging positive change. Goodbye.